Hi, everybody. It's Dana Markson from Rockstar Practice. We are here for Coping Skills Tool Belt, the workshop, and I'm really excited. Today is Thursday, March 4th, 2021. We have an amazing special guest presenter, Jenny Schottmiller, who is a very talented CPA and LMFT with a solo practice in Pennsylvania. And I've had the pleasure of consulting with Jenny privately. We did a consultation a couple of months ago because I had some questions and she was amazingly helpful. Also, if you haven't already, please right now or later today, join her amazing Facebook group, which we put the link in the chat right here. If you have any questions, you can certainly email me or email Jenny directly. Join the group. It is chock full of information, more information than you could possibly take in. Also, Jenny will be talking more about this. She has some really interesting and informative programs that you can pay for, a lot of free content on her YouTube channel. And so I really encourage you to take it all in, take notes, watch the recording, and then if you have any interest in any of the workshops or series that Jenny offers, please avail yourselves of them. They're extremely helpful. So Jenny's going to do a presentation. We'll have plenty of time for questions. I'm going to ask you all to keep your sound muted and your video off. If you do have a question, put it in the chat. If there's any issues with tech, just put it in the chat to me and I will take care of it. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Jenny Schottmiller. Take it away.
Awesome. Hello and thank you. I'm going to go through a couple of different topics. One's going to be components of financial wellness. I'm going to talk about decision making and designing processes that work for you as a business owner. And then I'm going to talk about some common barriers and tips to overcome. I know that it seems a little bit weird to seems weird even to me when I think about LMFT and CPA, like how does that happen? And I never set out to be both. I really was a CPA and thought I went to therapy. I got divorced. I went to 2 years of therapy. It changed my life. And I thought, what a cool job. And I, for a number of reasons, thought that job would be better suited to me than being a CPA. So I just left eventually. It took me a while, left being a CPA and switched to graduate school, became a therapist. And only once I had gotten my license, started my private practice, I find out that so many therapists struggle with some of these topics that because I was a CPA I already know them. And I thought, maybe I can make a little side business out of helping people understand these topics. And now it's not just a little side business anymore. So, what I want to talk about first is financial wellness, because there's a lot of people out there doing personal financial wellness and growth building and, debt reduction. There's a lot of resources for that. But when you have a private practice, you might not find a lot of resources for what makes your business financially healthy. And one of the things that's kind of unique about a private practice is, especially if you are a solo private practice where you don't have employees, is that you're going to make your money, you're going to see clients, make money, put a little aside for taxes, pay your bills, which aren't too large, and then the rest is all for you. So then what does it mean to have a business financial wellness if all you need to do is basically cover a few bills and then pay yourself? So there's a couple things that I think are really important concepts to understand as a practice owner, whether it's solo or group. And one is the distinction between accounting, cash management, and budgeting. These are 3 distinct concepts. And accounting really looks at what happened in the past, because what happened in the past is going to determine what you pay in taxes. And it's important information because it might drive some of your current and future decisions. If you don't have good accounting records, you don't necessarily know what happened in the past. You could have a feel for it because you saw the clients, you paid the bills. You could have a sense that, oh yeah, I'm starting to get busier. I'm seeing an average of 25 clients a week rather than 20 clients a week, so I'm making more. But when you see the numbers summarized in your accounting results, it's a much different picture. And if you don't have that picture, you're missing something that's going to help you make current and future decisions. One of the things I think is most important about accounting, and when I get to the processes part of this section two, I'll talk about what accounting systems are and how to choose one. But the thing that I think is most important is you need to know how each month went. If we're sitting here and it's March 4th, you need to know how January went and February went. And if you're a little behind or you don't even know how 2020 went yet, it's never too late to start developing these processes and find that out. But when you know how January went and February went, and then you're getting a feel for March, and then once March is done, you drop in all those numbers and you have a feel for how March went, you're going to have way more information to run your practice and make decisions than you would if, at the end of the year, you do a bunch of stuff and find out what you made for the year so that you can pay your taxes. So it's really important to do a monthly review for accounting. So the accounting is this one step that tells us about what already happened. Cash management, and a lot of people have heard of the Profit First book, which I recommend reading the book. Not everyone loves the process and methodology laid out in the book, but the book itself is a definite good read. But cash management is what Profit First aims to do. It aims to say, what are you going to do with your money when it comes in the door? So that you can make sure everything's covered and that you aren't last because you didn't go into business so that everyone else could get paid and you are going to not. That doesn't really happen in a solo private practice. It's really hard to not pay yourself if you don't pay yourself in a solo practice. You got a lot of money that will accumulate in the bank over time once you're busy. But it is easy to do in a group practice because you have a lot of responsibilities and you feel responsible for your contractors and employees. You have more bills as a group practice. So it is easy in a group practice to sort of end up not having as much left for you as you would like. So cash management in general is the concept of thinking ahead to what expenses you're going to have and not having them be too large. Also, keeping enough money in savings so that I personally like to have 2 to 3 months worth of expenses in my business. That way, if something happens and I have a low month, or if I can't work for some reason, I have enough money sitting there to cover my upcoming expenses, and I won't have to be putting money into my business to cover them. It's also really important because one of the biggest complaints people have about being self-employed is I don't have paid time off. But all paid time off is that your employer used to pay you when you took off, and you absolutely can pay yourself when you're not working as long as you set some money aside. So every month put a little bit of money into savings for your future paid time off, or when you have a good month, use that opportunity when it's a little bit higher than what you expected to put them that some extra money into savings. The other thing that's very useful to use the savings for is that we all have a few expenses that come once a year. And you might pay your, for example, malpractice monthly, but a lot of people pay it yearly. And professional memberships, often those dues are due annually. Mine all seem to hit in January or February. So that ends up being my lowest earning month because it's my highest expenses. But if you have some money in savings, then when you have a month with a lot of expenses, or if you decide this is the year you're going to do EMDR training or some other training that's rather expensive, you've got some money in savings that you can pull out and keep your pay even. And the other thing about cash management is looking into the future and saying, I have the cash that I need to grow in a way that's going to be healthy, that I'm not going to end up having to take a lot of credit card debt on or necessarily borrow money because I'm going to grow slowly and I've got the cash to fund that. Like if you're growing into a group and you want to hire, you know, one person and maybe you hire to get that process down. But when you hire people, there's a lot of expenses you might feel hit with all at once. And if you have some cash in the bank, then it's going to reduce your stress level. So managing your cash and how much money you have is the in the moment current. So we've got accounting that was past and cash management in the moment current. What decisions am I making about my cash now? And then the third aspect that's distinct is budgeting. And budgeting is the one that gets forgotten the most because it can. You could actually just completely forget about it and go years and years. You could have a practice, you could be in practice for 20 years and never have done a budget. But I really encourage people to think about a budget, not as a budget you might have in your household where you're like, now I can only spend this much on clothes. That's no fun. Not a restrictive thing, but is just a plan, a goal, sort of like having something I want to achieve. So if I try to make it so that every year I'm making more money. And when I have a goal in mind, I'm going to make this. As long as I know that goal and I'm thinking about that goal, even if it's just in the back of my mind, I am more likely to make decisions throughout the year that lead me to that goal. I can also check a couple times during the year and see, am I on track for that? A budget, however, does not need to be complicated or in any way difficult. A budget could be you scribbling down on a piece of paper, I want to make this much a month and I want to keep my expenses under this much a month. That could be your budget. Or you could have a very detailed budget where you take your profit and loss that you use to do your taxes for 2020, since we're at the beginning of the year, and make a copy of that in a spreadsheet preferably, or you could do it on paper, and change the numbers to be what you want 2021 to be. And now you have a budget, and it probably took you 10 minutes. So accounting the past, cash management the present, budgeting the future. And when you have those all covered and you're making decisions with all that information in front of you and where you're aware of it, you're much more likely to feel like your business is not only you're on top of it, but that financially healthy. A couple things I think are also important is making sure you, if again, if you have a solo practice, it's hard not to pay yourself. But if you have a group practice, to make sure that you do matter. You don't go into business and form a group to make less money than you would have individually. And you're going to be working harder as a group practice. As those of you that have a group practice know, the admin work can pile up. So making sure that you're always stepping back and looking at the big picture and saying, okay, I got into this because I wanted this to happen. Is that happening? And I think in general, ensuring that you're aligning your practice with your goals and being internally congruent with what you want, because there's a lot of people who start a practice where their goal is to make as much money as possible. There's people who start a practice whose goal is to serve a particular population well. And whether you are taking insurance or private pay, whether you're charging high fees or lower on the scale for your area fees, there's no wrong answer. And we can get, as much as we know as therapists about not shoulding ourselves, it is so easy when it comes to operating our practice that people will say, you should do this and you should do that and you should raise your prices this way and you should maximize this. But really what's going to matter and make you successful is, and feeling that your business is serving you and financially well, is making sure that your goals are aligned, your operations are aligned with your goals. So that's what I have for this sort of business financial wellness. I want to pause for a moment and ask questions, and I'm going to talk about sort of the processes and a little more nitty gritty stuff. So if anyone has questions, they could pop in the chat, but I don't see any right now. And
I think people are listening intently.
Okay.
I have a couple of questions, and
Go
I'm
ahead.
wondering if other people are thinking this. So I do have a group psychotherapy practice, which I've owned for, I think it's 10 years now. And so it's much more important that I have all my ducks in a row financially. And I know on March 2nd what my P&L, my profit and loss statement was for February, because I have a team in place to help me with that. So that's a little bit of a different egg, though. I'm wondering if some of you here are in private practice, or maybe you're not even in private practice. Maybe you want to be in private practice and you're trying to dream up, how would this work for me? I'm wondering if some of you haven't even done any of this. Maybe you pull your stuff together in March and you don't have a budget and you don't have accounting and you give it all to your accountant and you hope for the best. So does anybody have any basic questions? Like my question is, Jenny, if people in this room don't have themselves organized, what's one thing that they can do right now in terms of accounting, cash management, and budgeting that will help? What's one thing? Because it could be very overwhelming if they haven't even done their 2020 taxes yet.
If there was one thing, and this actually leads really nicely into the next section, if there was one thing that I would say to do, if you're not already doing it, is choose and use accounting system, because exactly what you just said, March 2nd, you knew what February looked like, but you knew that not only because you had people in place and systems in place, but you had like an accounting system that's tracking that
Yes.
information. It got updated. And I think, so I'm going to just go into the next section, and then this would be the one thing you need: an accounting system. Your EHR is not an accounting system, and it is not sufficient. Even though your EHR will spit out an income report, we don't know always if that income report is accurate. And an accounting system always starts with your bank account. So if you don't have a separate bank account, then I'd say, okay, well, back up. Before you get an accounting system, get a bank statement, get a bank account. Your business needs a bank account. You're in business, you're a business owner, you can treat it like a business, get a business bank account, at least one, maybe multiple, maybe having a savings account and a credit card, maybe others, but for sure business checking account, because accounting records start from what happened in your business bank. So if you have an EHR report that says, well, you should have gotten paid 120 for this session over here, but over here in your bank account, there was never $120 deposited. You don't want to pay tax on that. Don't pay tax on that. You need to start from now you have a problem, right? Because you need to go back and make sure that got collected. If it didn't get collected, if it was not billed or something like that. So there's a problem there. And that EHR report can help you identify a problem. But what's going to happen for what did your business actually make? It's going to be like, well, what got deposited? What a lot of people end up with, because we often start a private practice before we get all of the processes in place, is that you might, well, I know what I made because my EHR has a report over here, and I know what my expenses are because I've been writing them down on a piece of paper. We want to get all of that centralized into one spot, and that's all an accounting system is. It is a system that tracks the income that was collected and the expenses that were paid. So one of the things, and I'm sure everyone's heard, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I would prefer, because I don't think that's kind of insulting to say, keeping it simple is super. I like simple. That's why my business is named Simple Profit. If you make it overly complex, you're not going to use it. So the best accounting system is the one you're going to use. And it can be as simple as a spreadsheet. It does not have to be QuickBooks. You could be QuickBooks. QuickBooks is very useful tool. It could be Wave, it could be another accounting software, or it could be a simple spreadsheet where each month you have, this is the money I collected, these are the bills that I paid, and the expenses that I incurred. Some people are surprised to learn that a whole accounting system could just be a spreadsheet, but that's all it is. It's just tracking what happened in your business. One of the things I like to think about when I'm trying to help someone decide what's the best accounting system for you is, how does your brain work? If I talk to you about, well, if you do QuickBooks, you're going to link your accounts into QuickBooks. You're going to go in, you're going to categorize the expenses and the income as they come in, and you're going to have accounts. So there's going to be like possibilities, like, something could be an office expense or clinical supplies. And then you're going to run a report and you're going to look at the report. And I show it to someone and they go, I don't know, it kind of seems like a lot. And I talk to someone, then I say, okay, well, let's talk about the spreadsheet option. If you have a spreadsheet, I show them, here's what it's going to look like, or I have a spreadsheet you can buy, and you're going to put the information here and you're going to summarize it this way. And then usually people will go, oh, that seems right better. Or like, no, I actually think the QuickBooks sounds more like what I want. You want to pick the right system for you. Do not use the one that everyone says you should use. So think about how your brain works, think about what's going to work for you, and then use it monthly. A lot of people that have a group practice, especially a large group practice, will have a bookkeeper. And having a bookkeeper is fine, except if you have a bookkeeper and you have no idea how to do any bookkeeping yourself, you can run into a problem. Imagine hiring a biller where you didn't then go check were they actually doing their job? Was the money actually coming in? Are the outstanding ones getting resolved? That would be a problem, because if you had a bad biller, then they weren't following up and they weren't getting things pushed through. You could have a large number of transactions sitting there unbilled that are getting old and are going to be harder to collect on. Bookkeeping is the same way. If you learn how to do your bookkeeping first, and then based on how much time it takes you, you decide, I want to outsource it. Great. But you want to supervise the results. Like you just said, Danny, you said on March 2nd, you know, because you have a team and a system in place, March 2nd, you know what February looked like. That person who's helping with that delivers to you or puts it all in the system, and you know where to go to retrieve it, the P&L. And so
Yes.
if you have a bookkeeper, that does not absolve you of the need to know where everything is and to be able to check and have ways to check that it's being done properly. Because if
So
you are,
I just want to add that, and I didn't say this, it's a really good point though. She sends me an update on March 2nd, and then the second week of every month, we have a half-hour meeting where we go over it together. So it's not that I don't know every dollar, it's just I'm not actually the one that takes the numbers out of the bank account and puts it in the spreadsheet. I use Wave, by the way. I don't know if you were going to talk about actual spreadsheets, but I just had an Excel spreadsheet for years and years and years until we upgraded. So it doesn't have to be. QuickBooks was not intuitive for me. I'm glad that you said that, because everyone was saying you should use QuickBooks and I didn't like it. It didn't match. It was very complicated. And so I switched to a spreadsheet, and now we switched to Wave. And I love the idea of making it work for you. You want to hit your target, right? You want to be effective and making sure that your policies and procedures are manageable and that you are keeping up with it. Now, I would say, is anybody in here not doing any accounting at all until the end of the year? Because I'm just wondering where people are at in their financial wellness and
and
wealth.
I know that a lot of people end up feeling some shame around not keeping on top of it or having systems in place, and it ends up being this
Yes.
cycle of, I don't know what to do, so I don't do it, and then I feel bad about it. And so if people are in that position, it is, know that you're not alone. It's very, very, very common. I talk to a lot of people in private practice every week, and it is very common. And it is solved just the way that we solve a lot of other things related to shame, is that put it out there. And if it needs to be fixed, let's fix it. Because then going forward, you're going to be in a different cycle of, I know what to do, I did it, and I feel good about it. I feel good about it. And that's where you want to get to. So right at the beginning of the year, it's one of my favorite times to help people get on track, because if you are in that position, like you just said, you are going to have to sit here and go through, and it's a nightmare. People don't enjoy it. They're like, oh, tax season is my least favorite time of year, because that's the time where I have to spend an entire Sunday going through all of my receipts and all of my bank statements and what did I charge on my personal card, and figuring out what I made. And it's just such a big headache. And what I really want people to know is that if you do it monthly, it is not a headache like that. It's not like that at all. It takes way less time. Take the amount of time you do it at year end, divide it by 12, and then subtract like 20% off the time. Because when it's March 4th and you're going back and trying to figure out what happened last February before we even had a pandemic, which was 10 years ago, you don't know what that little charge from Amazon was. You have to dig through 12 months of Amazon, 13 months of Amazon charges to find out what you bought. And it takes more time to do it later versus if it's March 4th and you're just trying to figure out what you made February 2021 and you see an Amazon charge. Oh yeah, that was the computer charger I bought. I know what that is. Or if I have to look it up, it's right there at the top of the list. It doesn't take as much time to do it monthly as it does to try to do 12 months all at once. But if you are in that position, you have to do all of 2020. Don't stop at 2020. Do January and February right now.
Right.
Right away, do January and February, and then make a little list for yourself. What steps did you do to do that? If you don't have everything centralized into a business checking, your life will be so much easier if you do that. But if right now what your list looks like is go to my business checking, and then go to my personal credit card, write down the things there, and then, go find these other purchases and put them on my spreadsheet. When you go to do it in April, you're going to have your list, do these 5 things, you're going to do them. You will be surprised at how fast it is.
The
And
one other thing that's really awesome is I'm not naturally talented at numbers,
Mhm.
right? You're a CPA and a therapist. So those are marrying your strengths, which is amazing. And I am not. So it took me a really long time. I'm only doing it on March 2nd now because I've been doing this for 10 years. And I realized it's such a relief to have that meeting the first week of March and know all the finances. Where do we stand? And also, what's my profit? And by the way, the accountant, the bookkeeper accountant shares with me how much money I need to put away for estimated taxes every month. So I am not shocked at all. I know exactly the dollar amounts. And I was going to ask you that. So if you have a spreadsheet that you sell, I highly recommend, if you guys are looking for a really good way right now today, get in there to simpleprofit.com and take a look at Jenny's spreadsheet. I am sure it will help you. And
yep,
it's
and I
never
just
too
made
late
it.
to start.
And that's the other thing, and that was good that you mentioned that when you know exactly what you're making, it is possible to estimate your taxes. And the
Yes.
less information you have, the more difficult it is to make an estimate. And I'm kind of glad you mentioned too about like, I'm good with numbers. Like, I am good with numbers and I like numbers and I love spreadsheets, and that's all accounting geeky kind of stuff. But an accounting system is a system. And we are therapists. We know what an internal system looks like. We know what a family system looks like. And both of those are way, way more complicated than an accounting system, because an accounting system, all it's doing is saying, hey, money got deposited. Was it revenue or was it something else, like a mistaken deposit or the owner put money in? And then it looks at, well, what came out? Were those expenses, or was that paying the owner, or was it something else? Paying a loan back, paying a credit card. And then it just puts everything into like the buckets that it belongs in. That's all an accounting system is doing. So if you can understand how to help someone with trauma survive their family's Thanksgiving dinner, where all the trauma is going to, like, all the things that are going to remind them of their trauma come out, you can understand an accounting system. You don't need to be good with numbers to do it. You just need to know, hey, does this make sense? I saw this many clients. I made this much. Does that seem about right? Hey, I don't look like all the things that I paid are here. Did everything get covered? That's all you have to be doing. Okay, so I wanted to cover, let's see. Oh, I might have a couple more things. Oh, okay. The last thing in section 2 is try a process. And if it doesn't work, change it. If you try QuickBooks and you don't like it, try Wave. See if you like Wave. You can usually, in an accounting system, if it's, especially here at the beginning of the year, you can sign up for QuickBooks, pull all your data in. I actually help people learn how to use QuickBooks. So I think QuickBooks is a lot easier if you get like 1 hour of training in advance, at the start of it. So you can try it out. And then if it doesn't work, go and switch to Wave and pull all your data in Wave and start over with Wave. And then you have a system you like, or start with a spreadsheet and maybe use a spreadsheet for this year and make a new evaluation at the beginning of 2022 if another system will work. There is you're a little bit hit and miss when you try something and see if it works. Just like, we do this in every other aspect of our lives. Like, oh, I tried that, it didn't work for me. I tried something else. Like, we go and we find a therapist. Like, yeah, that doesn't seem like a good fit. Well, if your accounting system is a good fit, you are going to avoid it. You are not going to use it, and then you're not going to be helped by it. And it should be helping you. Okay, so wait, let me cover the third section, and then hopefully people maybe have some general questions or questions about what I've said. When I was thinking about common barriers and tips to overcome them, like, I could probably talk for 2 hours over things that get in people's way, like, when do you need to issue a 1099 to your landlord, and all these different rules and things that you need to know. But really, I think what it really comes down to is having a functional way to mentally get yourself through the process when you come into a barrier that has to do with accounting or business related stuff. So one thing that happens a lot is at the beginning of having a private practice, you don't know a lot about accounting and taxes and estimated taxes. What are those? When do I have to pay them? I don't really understand what QuickBooks is supposed to do for me and why do I even need it? It takes time to do this, and it's hard, difficult, because it's unfamiliar. So knowing that when things seem really difficult, it might be that you're not great with numbers, right? But Danny, you said, but you get your P&L and you know how to read it, right? And then you have your
Yes.
meeting, and if you have questions, you ask them. And my
Yes.
guess is that after the number of years you've been doing this, you're pretty familiar with the P&L and not at all intimidated by the numbers on it.
Exactly. From a
Right.
lot of exposure and practice and her walking me through it and analyzing it. Yes, definitely.
Right. And so we could think of it a little bit like exposure therapy, where if you avoid it, you're not going to get comfortable. But when you look at it, and especially if you have help or support and you get your questions answered in a non-judgmental way, then you are going to develop a comfort level and a confidence level with looking at the numbers. And it's really important to not feel judged or shamed through this process, because it's so easy to avoid. And that's what judgment and shame does for us. So one of the things I put down as tips to overcome barriers is finding the right people. Just like we would not stick with a therapist for 8 months if we realized it wasn't the right fit at the 4th session, we don't want to stick through with a tax accountant if they are rude, if they are condescending, if we ask a question and we feel judged or shamed that we asked. And accountants are actually pretty bad in this area. The amount of training accountants get at being, how do I want to say this, like educational and supportive, and even things like anti-racist training, it is non-existent in the tax world. So when you find someone who is talking down to you, or you just even have the sense that this person doesn't respect you, it might be like March and you're like, fine, this person's going to do my taxes this year, but don't stay with them for another year, because it will take you a while to find the right team in place, a good attorney, a good tax accountant, possibly a good bookkeeper if you have a group, especially a good biller. All these people that are going to make the administrative side of your practice, they should be helping you make it easier, not making it more uncomfortable or difficult. So I think it's really important. There aren't a lot of accountants that will take the time to do the education. There are some. If you find somebody who does that, once you find a really good tax accountant, you're probably going to want to try to keep them for the rest of their career, as long as they're in business. But just don't stay with someone providing poor service. We also tend to think of accountants as people who know everything. Oh, I don't know anything about taxes. They know everything about taxes. So whatever they say goes. But there's a lot of bad tax accountants. And when I'm in the tax Facebook groups with other tax people, there are people that show up and say, well, what about this? And they're like, all the other tax people will be like, step away from the tax return. Why are you working with clients? You need more supervision. And then a bunch of other people come and say, stop being so mean. They've got to learn somehow. But just like we wouldn't start being therapists without supervision there and expect it to go well, we want the same from tax professionals. So don't necessarily assume that the advice you get is that you can't question it. And accountants question things all the time. So to me, if a client is questioning an accountant and the accountant gets defensive, that's a red flag. That's a problem. They should be able to plainly and non-judgmentally say to you, that's a great question. Here's why. Here's the IRS guidance. Here's the IRS code. Here's the tax court case, or here's the accounting rule that supports what I am recommending we do. And that's great that you, as a business owner, want to be informed about this kind of stuff. That would be a great response. If the response you get is, why are you even questioning me? Of course I know what I'm doing. And you didn't go to accounting school, did you? Run. run. It's just not the dynamic that you want to have. You want to have more of a collaborative situation, because if you can't question it, how do you get reassurance that they're doing their job? And now they're doing work for you and you can't really oversee their work. I don't mean that you need to be able to do the taxes yourself, or know advanced tax skills, because tax accountants do very often have an extensive amount of training, but you absolutely are capable of reading a tax return and understanding what's on it. You're running it for a business. You got to this point, you are capable. Don't overpay for services. So one of the things and the common barriers I find is that you don't necessarily know what things are. If you don't know what something is worth, you're more likely to overpay. If you overpay, that's money that could have gone into the pocket for your family and not for the accountant. And unfortunately, some professionals can take advantage of that aspect, because, like, I know all the stuff and you know none of the stuff. But find out what things tend to cost, what other colleagues are paying for services. With your taxes, what you pay is going to be different based on whether you are a sole proprietor, an LLC, which means pretty simple, so a single member LLC, pretty simple taxes. It's, there should be a fee for doing it, but it shouldn't be really high. Partnerships are more complicated because there's two tax returns, and um, S corps are the most complicated. Every now and then someone will have a C corp, but it's very unusual. But S corps are more complicated, so you'd expect to pay more. Most S corp people doing S corp taxes charge between like $1,000 and $2,000. So you might have to pay for that, but then someone's charging you 45. I've seen people pay over 4,000. No, probably not, unless you have a lot of real estate investments and maybe multiple businesses that are very large. Then no. So don't overpay.
One
Um,
thing I want to add about that, Jenny, is always trust your gut. So I had a situation that came up with me last year where my accountant was giving me some guidance that didn't feel right. And I paid for a consultation with Jenny. And I said, I need your feedback on this. Something, we're an S Corp. It's a little more complicated. We have a lot, and I have two businesses. So, and it was really helpful to pay for that 1 hour of your time. You gave me a lot of links and information. And my gut was right. Something wasn't completely kosher, and we worked it out. So, one of the things that's awesome that you said is we wouldn't go to a therapist if it wasn't the right fit. So why would we do that with our accountant? I think that's amazing advice to listen to, right? And the
mhm.
other thing I hear people say, I hear therapists say this all the time, well, I wasn't taught that in school. I'm not a business person. And you just said you've done something right so far. You are running a business. So a therapy practice, even if you're not an S Corp, even if you don't even have an LLC, is a business.
Mhm.
So I want to highlight that. I think that's a really important thing you just said.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts a little bit when business owners go to a tax professional are not treated with respect. You
Hmm.
know, when I'm working with a client, and I tell my clients this, I say, my therapy clients, I say, look, I know a few things about relationships and people and the brain a little bit. And you know yourself and your life and your family. And we're going to put those things together and see if we can improve the situation, or reduce the impact of the problem. But I'm not treating it like I'm the expert and I'm one up and you're one down. I mean, I wouldn't say one up, one down to a client, but you know what I mean. And accountants do that a lot. I'm the tax accountant, so I'm up here, and you're this lowly person who doesn't know anything and should just do whatever they say. No, you know your business. They don't know your business. They don't even if they work in with a lot of mental health people, doesn't necessarily mean they know your business and what happens in your business. You have all that knowledge. So you need to, if it's a really good relationship, professional relationship, they're going to be taking their tax knowledge and you're going to have your business knowledge. And then together you're going to be able to, make sure your taxes are accurate, which is the most important, and maybe even be able to plan to minimize your taxes.
Yeah, great advice so far.
The other one is like a kind of along the same lines that I had written down. It's just believe, I wrote lack of confidence, just believing you can do this. It takes time. And the end goal, sort of like our budget for the future, is that after you've been running your monthly accounting statements and looking at your numbers and looking at your cash and making some decisions, over time, you're building some confidence. Even if you're starting feeling like your confidence is a negative level, that with the right support, with the right information, I think knowledge is key. When you know when a 1099 is due, when you know something about how taxes get estimated, you walk in to that appointment with your tax professional or your bookkeeper with a different mindset. Okay, well, that makes sense to me. And if I'm questioning you, it's because I just need this other little piece of information so that it all fits together, not like I'm completely starting from scratch. So over time, developing the knowledge, developing the confidence is, helps you overcome a lot of barriers, because then it's just, oh, I have this, like what you had, Dana, is you have this situation where like, okay, this is working, this is working, this is working. I'm concerned about this and this. And then we can
Yes.
just talk about those things. And you're like, okay, all right, yep. And that was my instinct, was that sounded a little bit not quite right. And I'm definitely going to go with my gut on that. Um, so over time, developing that confidence and that knowledge and knowing that you can do it.
I have a question or a comment, and I'm wondering if now would be a good time to ask it. Let me know if you want to wait.
No, go ahead.
So I'm thinking a little bit about how we're not taught this in grad school. We're experts in what you said, like clinical systems, right? Family systems and internal systems, emotional systems. And what I've heard, I'm a business consultant and coach as well. And what I hear a lot is this scarcity mindset or a lack of confidence mindset. Like, I don't know how to do that. I'm afraid. And so there's an avoidance mentality, right? So it's a procrastination because of fear or because of not really understanding. So what I've done and what I help other clients that I coach is to create a hierarchy of things that need to happen and do one small thing at a time. So maybe today you apply for a business credit card, right? Which I think is really important. I only spend on my business credit card business expenses. There's no crossover. I don't buy dinner. I don't buy Chinese food or go to the supermarket with my business credit card unless I'm taking out, doing a marketing lunch, and then I will use my business credit card. There's a very clear line. I also have business savings and business checking, which is completely separate. So I'm suggesting, I don't know how you feel, Jenny, if you haven't done that already, that would be an amazing place to start today. And then number two, know every dollar that comes in and out of your practice. And the way that I handle that, so I don't get overwhelmed, and I have a large volume because of group practice, is we do a weekly reconciliation. And if somebody's credit card, right now we're 100% online, so we're 100% using credit cards, which makes accounting a lot easier. If somebody's credit card got declined, I know it every Monday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a zero accounts receivable, which reduces my stress by like $1 million.
Yeah.
So, and those are hard conversations to have. You might need to do some of your own therapy to talk about your money mindset, or really dig deep and get some coaching around that. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are about both of those things.
Yeah, and well, I'm going to talk about that. Those are some really good points. But if anyone also has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat too, and we'll try to cover them before we end up. I think there's a lot of things we don't learn in graduate school. I didn't learn about EFT in graduate school, and I'm practice EFT.
Right.
We didn't learn EMDR. And there's a lot of stuff I learned in graduate school. I know about it. Like, yeah, I'll tell you about Bowen's differentiation, but I don't talk about it with my clients or anything, like sometimes differentiation
Right.
in my head, but it's much more likely Sue Johnson stuff is popping into my head. And I learned all that stuff after graduate school. So there's a lot we don't learn in graduate school. And I think what you said is right about the scarcity mindset is like, well, graduate school probably wasn't really intended to have people be business owners. It was intended to make people into therapists. And therapists are not all business owners. So if you want to be a business owner, which probably most people watching this are, then you're going to have to do a couple of extra things to be a business owner. And it's not even really that hard if you take the approach of, well, I need to learn this. So I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to do that, like you laid it out. Then at some point, you're going to wake up, and go, wow, I know a lot of stuff about business that I didn't know about 2 years ago, because you took the mindset of, I got some stuff to learn. I need to learn it, you know? And so yeah, I think it would be nice. I actually would prefer if we taught people about accounting and budgeting in high school. That would be amazing, because everyone could benefit
Yes.
from this. And I think everyone should have the right to be a business owner if they want, if they have an idea, if they have a profession, to go into business for themselves, to do it. And if we taught people in high school about this stuff, that would be really amazing. I also think we all have money stuff, right? Some of us have harder money stuff than other stuff than others have. We can get a lot of messages when we grow up about money. But I really think, as much as there is a value in looking at money trauma and money mindset, it is also a lot about the behavior of what we do. Because no matter what my money background is, if I'm looking at my P&L monthly, I know what happened in my business. And if I'm looking at the big picture, I know what expenses are upcoming and how much I'm going to need. And then, of course, if I get in my own way and I know what I need to do and I don't do it, okay, I'm going to have to work on that. But the bigger problem I see with business owners is just not knowing what to do, or what the facts are, or what the rules are, or being told that something's a rule when it's actually not a rule. And I do that a lot, where people say, oh, well, you have to use QuickBooks. No, you don't. No, you use QuickBooks if you like QuickBooks. There's other options. There's Wave, there's a spreadsheet, there's FreshBooks, GoDaddy has one, there's others. And so there's a lot of times where I think this becomes a should. It's a rule that isn't really a rule. When you know that stuff, your other money trauma and money stuff is going to get less in the way, because you know what to do and you're doing it. Not that I'm a
The
behavior,
other,
because I'm not really a behaviorist. I'm a systems person, and I'm an attachment person.
right.
But when it comes to money, nothing really beats having a P&L that you look at monthly.
Right. And knowing what the profit is, right? Feeling really good about all the hard work and getting rewarded
And
for that.
it might be that because of money stuff or money trauma, you ended up in a situation where you have a business checking, and then a personal credit card, and then a savings over here, and it's commingled with personal and business stuff. You know what's going to fix that? Getting everything to run through your business checking, getting a business credit card and a business savings. And now all the business stuff has all the business transactions. And the only thing that goes between business and personal is when you pay yourself. Doing
Right.
that is going to drastically clarify and simplify the work you need to do to understand what happened in your business.
Yeah. And I also think taking a look at this stuff is really uncomfortable and hard sometimes, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you, from a clinical perspective, if I have a client who's having some difficult financial times and I provide a service to her, I still get paid for that service, and I still expect to get paid for that service. And really working through your own money values, your money mindset, and your self worth, I think it matters. We would never expect to go out for dinner and have the chef go, "Oh, you don't have to pay me today after you ate." Right? We would never, a chef would never let us off the hook. They would probably call the police. Right? And so I don't think therapy is any different. We're providing an invaluable service. And I think understanding your systems and your boundaries and holding a firm line around them are really important to the whole frame clinically. If a client knows they're getting it over on you by not paying their bill, are they going to trust you in the therapy because you're not holding a firm boundary? And I am a strong believer in that. Right? We have zero accounts receivable. We don't have a dollar owed to our practice, which is amazing. And that's because we have really tight systems in place. I will tell you, it didn't get there overnight, though, right? It was a really long process. And we're also private pay, so it makes life very easy for us. It's super clean. They come, we charge our credit card, and we're done. We're not waiting for insurance reimbursement. So I get that that's different for other practices as well.
Mhm. Yeah, but that whole concept of I have a plan, whatever it is. I mean, if you do sliding scale or if, whatever you set your rates are at, but then this is my plan and then I execute the plan. So think about what's the appropriate policies and then execute the appropriate policies and stick to them. And then if you need to, you can revise things, but until you get to the point where everything is working and you're feeling on top of it. And you sleep
Yeah,
better at night, right? When you sleep better at night, when you're on top of your
absolutely.
profit, on top of what your processes are, and you know what's happening, and you know that you did all the things. Like a lot of times I'll sit down with someone and they'll say, "Oh, that's all I have to do? I didn't know it was so simple." Yes, that's all you have to do. You just have to do it. And you just have to do it monthly. And then you do that, and then it brings so much peace to your life to feel like, "Oh, I did the things. Check the box. Good again till next month."
Right, absolutely. I'm not seeing any questions or comments. Who, as we're beginning to wrap up, maybe this is all new information and everyone is digesting. Anyone, we have an expert guru in our midst today, which is an amazing opportunity. Anybody have a question as we're wrapping up regarding anything wealth, building financial wealth? And I look at it as financial health,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You need to be financially sound. Anybody have any
We
questions or
we could
comments?
maybe say financial health to financial wealth, because the end goal,
Yeah.
if things are working well and you're on top of it and you have clarity and you're planning ahead, is that you will make more money. You will have money to invest in your retirement, in other types of investments, and build a good financial life for yourself. And if you do that,
Yeah.
find a financial planner. CPAs are not financial planners. Financial planner is a completely separate profession, and it's not at all the same as being an accountant. So accountants do not get a lot of training in they get no training actually in investments. We know some tax rules around things like how account investments are taxed, but when you start to get to the point where you're building wealth, also get a financial planner as part of your personal financial team, because they're going to be able to advise you on things that an accountant is not qualified for.
Yeah. I like what you said, not expect free meal and trust your gut. Thanks, Jenny. I'm brand new to private practice and have this feeling that there's financial things I need to know, but I don't, like quarterly taxes. How do I learn about that and what to do there? Do you have a checklist of sorts to help us make sure we are considering things we need as we get started? I'm going to come
So I
back
just put
on.
in the link in there to my start page. It's just starting your business. It's like the top 10 things, first things you need to do. And if you go through that list, I have links on that page. So you go here to learn more about this, go here to learn more about this. That is a great place to start. If you go to my website, there's a lot of things like my blog. I have a lot of tax information on my blog. If you want to know how to deduct car mileage or meals or gifts, like go and read my blogs. It will take you a long time, but make a list of what they are and pick a couple and read them. And that's also linked on my start page. Also, in the reason I have a Facebook group is that is a place to ask questions. There's no other place where you're going to find a CPA answering questions for free. And you can do that in my group. Go there, ask a question. And I have in my group, past posts are organized by topic category. So you can go to the estimated tax topic category at the top of my group and read all the past posts about estimated taxes or ask a question. So my group, also my YouTube channel, which is kind of new, so it doesn't have a ton of stuff, but going forward, all the things that are on my blog and other things that I get asked a lot are going to all be turned into YouTube videos. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's the other place.
I will tell you, I'm on Facebook and Jenny's group, and she is extremely responsive, answers every single question. I've never seen anything like it, and has grown a very large following in a year or two, right? Like 2 years, something like
It's
that.
been it was August 2018 when I started.
Wow, it's
Uh,
amazing. I've
but
watched it from the beginning. I've really been part of it, and I have learned so much. So it's a great free service. And like Jenny just said, there's no other CPA that's just on Facebook all day long answering questions for mental health professionals. There's no such animal. You're it.
A totally different webinar to dig into why am I like this and why do I do that? That would be a completely different webinar.
Well,
Thank you
it
so much
serves you.
for having me. And people, just that are watching, like, you can always get that your questions answered later by coming to my group or emailing me or finding resources on my website.
Yes, absolutely. I want to thank you so much and honor you for spending an hour with us during this very busy time for you. Thank you all for showing up. Stay well, be well. See you all next week. Bye.
Awesome. Bye. Thank you.